Hello, welcome to the Retroprogressive Yoga Institute. My name is Swami Omkarananda. I am a disciple of Prabhuji since 1997, learning from him now for 25 years and going into the fascinating intricacies of his wisdom. In this institute, the disciples of Prabhuji share our own reflections and understandings of his teachings and how we try humbly to apply and to live by them, with the hope that this can help you if you are interested also in digging into this fascinating wisdom, how we can benefit from it in our process, in our spiritual development. I'm very happy to start today the second course on this book, which is Tantra, Liberation in the World, in which Prabhuji shares the depths of the Tantric revelation. In the first course that I recommend to watch before this one is we focus on the first section of the book called the Tantric Vision. In that version, Prabhuji puts really the building blocks of what this revelation was built upon and giving us the taste and the attitude, the Tantric vision, that's how we call it, the way to see the world from a Tantrika perspective. In this section, which will be a very long section of the book, he will unfold the origins and development of the Tantric revelation, in which I find it fascinating, first of all, the level of details and the organized way that he presents the different branches that develop from within this revelation. What it gives really, beside the fascinating wisdom of each one of the lineages of this revelation, it gives really the context in which it appears, and it allows us to appreciate so much more the miracle that was this revelation, and to be grateful for, again, all odds, with a lot of difficulty, the Tantrics managed to continue the lineages and to preserve this wisdom that, although most of the lineages were broken, we do have today a lot of the scriptures that by miracle really were able to survive till our days. And in this way we can just be transported to that times in which this revelation appeared and was lived and realized by so many Tantrikas. In this particular lecture, we will study the characteristic of a Tantric vision. You need to understand that in India there were many spiritual developments in all directions, and the beauty of India is that was a very embracing surrounding for every new lineage. India always gave a lot of credit to the personal realization and understanding that when a person becomes enlightened and find his own connection to the truth, so it can be innovative, it can be new, it can bring new tools, new path, and it doesn't mean that it's contradicted to the what was before. So the attitude was embracing the new developments and with basically certain principles, which is whatever is based on the Vedas, and it's not negating the Vedic revelation, although it's renovating and bringing new and more directions how to develop. So it's part of the umbrella that we call Hinduism. Now, the Tantric revelation, it did contradict some of the very core principles of the Vedic revelation. And that's why it was developing for a while as a parallel revelation, almost as a separate religion. But with time, the Tantric elements were like incorporated into Hinduism, and today is totally merged into mainstream Hinduism. Now, the question that I want to start this lecture with is, what makes a Tantric revelation? Because it was so diverse, it didn't have they didn't have a one philosophical or practical basis, but there were many different directions and this is a revelation that developed over the centuries taking different philosophical and theological perspectives. So the question is, what the Tantric revelation, if we are going to study its history, what makes something Tantric or not Tantric? What are the basic characteristics of a Tantric revelation? Prabhuji starts this section with the following sentence. Within the essence of every human being dwells the yearning to understand what lies beyond the earthly plane. With this powerful sentence, Prabhuji opens the study into the history of Tantra. Basically, the history of Tantra is the history of the human search that in its essence wants to know what is beyond the earthly plane. The human race is fascinating in its history. We see the development of this intelligent, self-aware animal that could pass this development from being nomads and looking for food till developing a global economy, from being limited to how much they can walk to domesticated animals and inventing the navigation and inventing planes and even space travel, from controlling the fire and knowing how to do tools to modern computers and artificial intelligence. It's the human curiosity, creativity, and unrest is fascinating. In the area of exploration, from exploring different continents to exploring different planets, is astonishing also the ability that they develop into making medicine that passed in the 250 years ago. The life expectancy was in average 30 years, 250 years after it's 70 years. So they really managed to develop a much longer life, more comfortable life, and life with more sophistication. Although all this advancement, still we can see that the internal conflict persists. And this curiosity and this creativity, it's very blessed. But what about the subject search? What about the subjective search? I watch and I see and I create and I invent, but who I am? Basic question. Before I know what to do, I need to know who I am. Before I'm dedicating my life to something, I need to know what I'm supposed to do, what will bring me this fulfillment that I'm looking so desperately. So the history of Tantra is the history of those who dedicate to the search of themselves and their connection with their origin, and to know what is Earth, what I'm doing on Earth, who I am really, and how to reconnect, and why I feel this unrest, this lack of peace, this need to find something, and what is the right direction. So we are reconnecting to those who look for themselves in so many ways. And not only that, they also found themselves, and they also left for us hints how to walk after their footsteps. To learn about the history of Tantra, when its very revelation says that there is no time, it sounds like a contradiction. So if there is only the present, and all this revelation tries to bring us to live and strive in the present moment, saying that only in the present we are lying and relaxing in what we really are. So what is the purpose of studying its history, and what is its past? Now Prabhuji explains in the context of the retroprogressive path the time, and he says the following. He says that only the present exists. Of course, it's not only a mystical experience, it's even a scientific conclusion. But yet, for us, the past is very real. Why? Because the present, it comes equipped with the past. The past didn't happen in some past. The past is happening here to us to you. So Tantra is not something that happened in the past. He gives the example of a dream. When you are dreaming, you come maybe to a place that you don't know in your real life, but in the dream, although the dream started just when you start dreaming, in the dream you already knew the place, or you already knew these people, or you already had an history in the dream, and the dream was just created. So that means that the dream in the present, it brings the past. Similarly, now our moment, Tantra is part of my reality because it's part of what my interest is, and it get into my awareness. So it's not really to study the past, but to study the past, how it influenced my present. And in the fact that we are coming across this knowledge, those are really secrets or hints that and we come across our awareness, it makes them part of our present. The approach that I suggest to go through when studying the very detailed history that Prabhuji kindly presents in this book is to do it from the point of view of the Tantrikas. We can look as historians, we can look as scholars interested in this human phenomenon, we can look at as witnesses of this revelation. But the most fascinating point of view that I will try to share is to look at this from the eyes of the Tantrikas. How they live, how they thought, what they were interested, which sacrifice they took, what they gave up, what they accomplished, what frustrated them, what excited them, what they understood, how they teach, how they pass on this revelation. And all this amazing adventure that we are going into now, that Prabhuji takes us really hand by hand into these magical words of the Tantrikas, is an invitation to not to learn the history of art, but to really take brushes and paint. Not to learn the history of soccer, but take the ball and go to the field and play. And the history of Tantra is an invitation not to look at this as something that happened to some people in the very far past, but as something that happened to me, enriching me and giving me shining examples of how to follow, how to reconnect, how to know myself. Characteristics of the Tantric revelation. What makes really a revelation to be called Tantric? Now Prabhuji brings the description of a great scholar, Theum Gordian, which passed away not long ago, and we want to honor his memory and be grateful for his contribution. And in general, there are so many amazing scholars that dedicated their lives to go deeper and to share their findings in this very encrypted, really, history lost in past. There are so many names, Alexis Sanderson and David White and Christopher Wallis and so many others that they really share in very nice books. And Prabhuji brings some of them, in this case, how Theum Gordian listed the key element of a Tantric sadhana, meaning that if we found this element, this revelation can be categorized as Tantric. 1. Distinctive initiation ceremonies. 2. Visualizations and worship of deities. 3. The use of mantras and maṇḍalas. 4. Yogic practices involving the subtle body. When telling the history of Tantra, we need to remember that Tantra is eternal wisdom. So the history of Tantra is not when it was invented, but when it was channeled in a way that they wrote scriptures. It is known that was a revelation going thousands of years orally, and at certain point probably the lineages were broken, so this wisdom was lost, and it reappeared. The lineages reappeared around the 5th century of the current era. Doesn't mean that this is the age of the revelation. It is a very ancient, it says that it's not less ancient than the Vedic revelation, just the lineages were broken. So when we are telling the story, we are really telling the story of what we know and what survived, evidences that survive over time, of an eternal wisdom that at certain point was put in written literature and written tantras, agamas, and in that way we can see when we can learn the teachings. So the time in which this revelation reappeared was a time where the prominent darshanas in India were the Sankhya and the Vaisheshika. Sankhya Yoga is a revelation revealed by the mystical Saint Kapila, that he was very close to the circle of the yogis, and they were basically analyzing the human experience, and categorizing this experience in different categories. In the philosophy of Sankhya, it's a dualistic philosophy which see the Prakriti as different from Purusha. Purusha is transcendental, Prakriti is a separate category of existence. And by studying and categorizing the human perception, so they bring into a deeper understanding of our experience. But the Tantra, it was not busy in discrete categories of the experience, but in the underlying unity behind every experience. It was the subjective search of the self, of the being. Prabhuji currently is writing a book that is fascinating, that is the history of the self, how the human race over the different times and places were searching for the self, searching for the unifying element behind everything, searching for the subjective experience. And Tantra is one of the shining examples of a revelation that invites to the subjective search. In order to analyze a little bit these qualities, because in the rest of the courses we will go in really deep detail of how each lineage dedicate and what they focus on, I want to elaborate on these 4 points of the characteristic of the Tantric sadhana, bringing the scriptures themselves. So let's read. We will read from the Vijñāna Bhairava Tantra. The Tantras are actually dialogues between Shiva and Shakti. In this particular Tantra is between Bhairava and Bhairavi, the goddess. These dialogues happen in the intimacy of their loving relationship, and this is what we hear from their conversation. Sri Devi asked Bhairava, "Is your reality transcendent or immanent, or it is completely immanent or complete transcendental? If it is immanent, then the very nature of transcendence is contradicted. Transcendence cannot exist in the divisions of color, varna, sound, shabda, or form, rupa. If transcendence is indivisible, then it cannot be defined or coexist with composite parts. O Lord, by your blessings, please destroy all my doubts completely." This is the spirit of Tantra. She is the goddess, the inquisitive, the curious, that she's asking the most fundamental questions that we humans need to ask. She's setting the example of a seeker, focusing knowing what is God, immanent, transcendent. If it boasts, it cannot be. And if it's transcendent, how it's the experience. Those questions are the invitation that the Tantric has opened. Open your curiosity to this. Do you know this? If you don't know, are you interested in this? Look Look this amazing dialogue that a true disciple looking for truth, unsettling, saying it cannot be. Are you transcendent? Are you immanent? It's a contradiction. Please explain me. And this is how Bhairava answers. Then Bhairava says, "Good, well spoken. Oh dear one, what you have asked about is the essence of Tantra. Noble lady, although this is the most secret part of the Tantras, yet I will speak to you about what has been expounded regarding the defined forms of Bhairava." We can see in this illustration of Svachandra Bhairava with Bhairavi the very intimate relationship, loving relationship between them. And this book brings many illustrations that help us to understand and realize the amazing iconography of this revelation. That, of course, over the following lectures we will understand their function and their purpose. So, taking these verses of the Vijñāna Bhairava Tantra, let's try to recognize in them these 4 characteristics that characterized the Tantric revelation. 1. Distinctive initiation ceremonies. O Lord, by your blessings, please destroy all my doubts completely. The relationship of Shiva and Shakti is a relationship of a master and a disciple. In this tradition, the tradition of Tantra is especially focused on the discipleship. All the Hindu tradition basically are based on the teachings of an enlightened guru. But the Tantra, it was impossible to study Tantra without having the personal guidance of a guru. This revelation was esoteric, giving only to those who are qualified for it. And in this attitude of the goddess, acknowledging that I need you, I need your blessings, that this knowledge is a matter of grace. I cannot get to it intellectually. I cannot understanding from my own conclusions. It's not a mental knowledge. I need your blessings, and I need you to guide me. I need you to transfer me the wisdom, because I am in ignorance. I am in the mental cell that doesn't let me see beyond my very subjective experience. So the attitude of humbleness, the attitude of inquiring, please help me, please give me, this is what is required for this transmission to happen. The knowledge is not a mental study. The relationship is not like a teacher with a student that you learn certain information. But the transmission needs to happen in levels that are beyond the words. And therefore, for this to happen, needs to be a very intimate relation of mutual trust and of humbleness, so we can be empty ourselves to let this revelation come to us and overtaking us. This revelation I will not add to my storage of knowledge, to my self-image. That is a path of self-destruction, of destroying what I call self and replacing this to my true self. So from the egoic perspective, it's a destructive path, and we have many destructive elements in the iconography of Tantra, because it's a path that needs to destroy the darkness, destroy the light, destroy the forgetfulness and ignorance. And for this, we need to have the vulnerability to surrender to these who can help me to my own interest, that is to destroy my ignorance. Good, well spoken. O dear one, what you have asked about is the essence of Tantra. We see here the intimacy in the relationship between them. This is one of the qualities of the Tantra. It's not an open doctrine for the masses. It's a loving, it needs to be transmitted in a loving relationship where he said, dear one, you have spoken very good. I'm very pleased with you. Here you see how pleased Bhairava is with Bhairavi, saying that you can ask for so many things, but you ask about the essence of Tantra, meaning you want to know who I am, who you are, what is the subjective experience, what is reality. So he was very pleased with her questions, and this shows how she was qualified for this revelation because she's focusing on the essence. Bhairava says, noble lady, although this is the most secret part of the Tantras, and here we see the importance of the very distinctive initiation, is a very secret part of the Tantras. Those Tantras, we read them today, we have the texts, but they were not public. In order to reach this text, you needed to be initiated. And it's even if we read them today, it's known in the Tantric wisdom that they cannot be transmitted by words. So what this revelation gives, it's not the words. That therefore, from reading the mantras, it's not the transmission cannot occur. It only can occur in the loving relationship between master and disciple, in which the disciple surrender and ask humbly, and the master trusts in the sincerity of the disciple and in the responsibility, and therefore it reveals the secrets. It's not secret because there is something to hide. The Tantric revelation is secret because it cannot be given to someone that will not use it responsibly. It is very known that the Tantra used to give powers to the seekers, to empower them with powers that are beyond the ordinary person. Because in order to break free from the shackles of illusion, you need a lot of energy. And this energy was given in the very distinctive initiation ceremonies and in the different rites and practices of this path. So if you give this power to someone that will not persist on the path, that will use it maybe for its own egoistic benefit, so you are giving a very dangerous weapons in the hands of a monkey. You lose control of what they will do with this power. So the master needed to see how the disciple is qualified. Then we said, you're a noble lady, and although it's very secret, you deserve that I will reveal this to you. We can recognize in this verse the visualization and worship of deities. Bhairava says, yet I will speak to you about what has been expounded regarding the defined forms of Bhairava. In the continuation of this text, we will see how Bhairava criticized the useless worship of the form and give hints that the Vedic worship is useless, because to focus on the form is to focus on an illusionary aspect. Yet, he will reveal here the knowledge of the forms of Bhairava. Now, the way of worship of Tantra is very unique. In a way, what the Tantra does is categorize not the things of our experience, but the level of our awareness. So our limitation is the limitation of awareness, of consciousness. And the way back is to enlarge and deepen our consciousness until we are fully aware of the unity with the ultimate reality. Now, the process that the Tantric aspirant goes is a process of enlarging consciousness. And the technique, the ways that the Tantra uses is to go and focus in a different form of Bhairava that represent a different level of awareness. And by visualizing this form, we get like empowered with that level of consciousness. And this is how the aspirant goes and advances in the different levels of consciousness. Each level is characterized by a Bhairava, but one form of Bhairava. In this particular Tantric sect, there are 64 forms of Bhairava that the worship is being done, and the visualization, because it's not only to worship an external deity, but to visualize me, myself, identify one with the deity. So in a way, all the immanent that the Bhairavi was asking, are you immanent, or are you transcendent? It's not contradictory. So he's going to unfold these very intrinsic questions that are showing that by visualizing in the immanent level, the transcendent is becoming one, is immanent, is transcendent, is both, and is not contradictory. And this is what in this Tantra Bhairava will go and explain, but not only explain philosophically, but will bring Bhairavi to this experience. We recognize the use of mantras and maṇḍalas. Bhairavi says transcendence cannot exist in the divisions of color, varna, sound, shabda, or form, rupa. The immanent experience, the sensorial experience, it's characterized by sounds, by colors, that is another way to say light, by sight, and by forms. This is how we experience reality. Now we are very familiar with this experience of senses, the sensual experience, the experience of lights and colors and forms. This is how we interact. This is considered the immanent experience. Now, how can be something transcendent when there is so much division? So the Tantric path is to use the immanent experience in order to reconnect to the transcendent. Is different from other paths that says, okay, yes, here there is really no transcendence, there is division, there is things, there are categories, there are different experiences, but there is a level that is higher, that is unity, that is transcendent, and there is no division. The Tantra says through the immanent we connect to the transcendent. And the path of Tantra is a path that practices this and takes the seeker from the reality of duality to the reality of unity. This revelation explains that every object of experience, every experience in the immanent plane, it was generated originally by a sound, shabda. From this sound emanates a laser-like light that creates a yantra of forms we call color, the varna, the sight, and from this geometrical form emanates the form, the rupa. So these are the three aspects of the immanent experience. What this revelation does is to take these three aspects and to practice, and transform them into mantras using the sound, yantras using the color, and maṇḍalas using the forms. These three elements are elements in the Tantric practice. But how these relate? If we focus on a Bhairava, a form of Bhairava, that it was created from a level of consciousness, so focusing on the form, it will lead us to the level of consciousness that it represents, because ultimately the immanent is my experience, and my experience occurs in my consciousness. So ultimately, if I focus my awareness on certain sound, mantra, so I will reconnect to the origin, the transcendental origin of that sound. So it takes every Bhairava, that is one representation, every Bhairava is an aspect of the consciousness. It has a mandala, it has a yantra, and it has a mantra. So it's a process of from gross to subtle, focusing first on the mandala, or even on the deity, on the representation, on the form of the deity, then on the yantra, which is a more abstract level, and then on the mantra, that is the sound vibration. And through this process of connecting to the essence of every Bhairava, we reconnect to the level of consciousness that they represent. So all the Tantric practice is a reconnection to the awareness. 4. Yogic practices. The Vijñāna Bhairava gives 112 Tantric meditations that lead to the recognition of the true nature of reality, our Bhairava consciousness, or called Vijñāna Bhairava. This revelation is a practical revelation. It's not a theology, it's not a doctrine, it's not a philosophy. It doesn't come to bring answers. Now we know that the Tantrika thought that Bhairava is transcendent or that the God is immanent. It's all about you. That's why I said the history of Tantra is the history of you. You are the son or daughter of the seekers of truth. And we inherit this treasure, we are millionaires of the spirit because we have these fathers, very rich fathers, that they look for reality. And the way they did it is not by knowing or learning, but by experiencing. So in order to answer the very inquisitive questions of Bhairava doesn't give ready answers, but it takes her through a process of 112 meditations that will go and expose her to the 64 levels of awareness, of consciousness of Bhairava, until reaching the complete void, the complete unity, and merging with our true nature. So it's an unbelievable practical path that takes you and your experience in the body to reconnect to your transcendental experience. Some of the examples of the type of practices that this scripture gives are the following. Yogic practices included among others are breath awareness techniques, kundalini techniques, concentration of the body, non-dual awareness, mantra practice, visualizations, contemplations of the senses, pleasure methods, intense sensations and emotions practices. It takes your very experience, the experience of your desires, the experience of your senses, your sensual experience, your emotions, your passions, your breathing, your visualization, your imagination, your creativity, you as a miracle of the divine, and taking this, focusing, practicing, bringing awareness to all the different aspects of yourself, of your body, because there we will find behind it the transcendence, the true nature behind this illusionary feeling that I am separate, I am independent, I am my body, and I also am the doer, I am the feeler, I am the actor, I am the protagonist of this, my own particular and personal story. That there lies the origin of all our suffering, all our conflicts, because in fact we are part of the big one, and our arrogance, our disconnection is what makes us suffer and disconnect and entangle in this samsara, in the wheel of birth and death. Our fears, our nightmares, all are due to our disconnection. So the invitation is to reconnect, and the very compassionate tantrikas give so many methods, things that work for them, that help them, and through this Bhairava wants to help Bhairavi as the perfect seeker, and to give and set the example of every seeker that can be enriched from her attitude, her humbleness, her sharpness, her focus on the essence, and her will to go and undergo all these practices in order to reconnect to her true nature. These practices, although we can read them, they're being given in this amazing scripture in short, in a very short description of what they are, and it's more like a guidance book for the master to guide the disciples. So the tantrikas were organized in groups, in kaulas, in which in the initiation a new practitioner was incorporated to the group. if it proved to be qualified. And then all these very secret techniques were taught to him until he reached and liberated from his illusionary separation. Now, it's known that even if we practice them today without the careful and close guidance of the master, they are not effective. So unfortunately, it's not a technique that we can apply as it is to our lives. All what we can do is to develop our attitude, to make the disciple in us, because then what is right will arrive to us. This path is known to have liberated so many souls, creating so many masters and lineages that it's an unbelievable miracle. And for us, it's a miracle itself that we can even learn about it. So let's focus on creating the disciple in us. Prabhuji continues his book writing as follows. The history of Tantra is the tale of fervent spiritual seekers, willing to sacrifice their social status in order to find truth. Instead of their benevolent and compassionate gods, they opt to worship the fierce goddesses that will not settle for anything less than the head of their own devotees. The receivers of this revelation forsook a prosperous and tranquil life to undertake an esoteric path guided by enlightened gurus. Yes, the story of the Tantrikas is really the story of spiritual heroes, that they took a very difficult path, and the more you will learn about it, you will learn to appreciate how much they had to really give up in order to be able to qualify for this path. And to understand that I can add to myself many things in this world, but if I don't know myself, I didn't do anything in this life. And I'm ready to pay the price. And the price is our ego, our individuality, our pride, our comfort, our egoism, so many things. Bhairava will request. And the path is hard, is sharp like a blade of a razor, it said. It's dangerous without guidance, but is for really heroes. Prabhuji called them fervent seekers, that they were ready to give up their comfort zone and go for the exploration. Attempting to reconstruct the mosaic of Tantra's development, we follow the long-gone footprints of the brave souls who were not satisfied with the paradise promised by conventional religion and, with deep spiritual non-conformity, looked for the path that could lead them to the ultimate liberation. Spiritual non-conformity. I think this is a very good description of the retroprogressive path. It's not enough to have an image of spirituality or have a practice of spirituality. You need a very deep spiritual non-conformity, that I have questions and I don't want to settle with ready answers. I want to go and open the path, pay the price, go after the footprints of heroes of the spirit, that they understood what they came to do, and they could realize the ultimate truth. This is the history that we will learn, the history of those souls, and what they did, how they live, what they discover, and what and how we can benefit from the huge path that they open and unfold before us in order for us to walk. So thank you for the Tantrikas that left us these treasures, these really gold coins for us to enjoy from them, and for Prabhuji for opening this invitation for everyone who is thirsty, who is inquisitive, and who wants to know more about himself. So we will go in the following lessons and continue studying about the history of Tantra. Thank you for now. Jaya Prabhuji.